We live in interesting times for the headlines. The Pentagon said that the United States will send reinforcements to the Gulf region following attacks on Saudi oil facilities, which it blames on Iran. Rare small protests broke out in Cairo and other Egyptian cities calling for the removal of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, but police quickly dispersed them. Riot police and protesters in Hong Kong fought brief skirmishes near the Chinese border on Saturday, the latest clashes during huge pro-democracy protests that have battered the financial hub for more than 3 months. And masses of children skipped school to join a global strike against climate change that teen activist Greta Thunberg said was only the beginning. I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us. Now to the news. U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper said that the United States will send reinforcements to the Gulf region at the request of Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates following attacks on Saudi oil facilities, which it blames on Iran. The Pentagon chief said an Iranian attack on an American spy drone in June after Tehran seized a British oil tanker, combined with the attack on 2 Saudi oil installations last Saturday, represents a dramatic escalation of Iranian aggression.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. General Dunford and I just returned from the White House, where we met with the President and his national security team to discuss options to deter Iran's continued aggressive behavior. As we have seen, the Iranian regime is waging a deliberate campaign to destabilize the Middle East and impose costs on the international economy. In the face of this sustained malign behavior, the United States and other countries have demonstrated great restraint in hopes that Iranian leadership would choose peace and reverse Iran's steep decline into isolation and economic collapse. But the attack on September 14th against Saudi Arabian oil facilities represents a dramatic escalation of Iranian aggression. It is clear, based on detailed exploitation conducted by Saudi, the United States, and other international investigative teams, that the weapons used in the attack were Iranian-produced and were not launched from Yemen, as was initially claimed. All indications are that Iran was responsible for the attack. In response to the Kingdom's request, the President has approved the deployment of U.S. forces, which will be defensive in nature and primarily focused on air and missile defense. We will also work to accelerate the delivery of military equipment to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the UAE to enhance their ability to defend themselves. As the President has made clear, the United States does not seek conflict with Iran. That said, we have many other military options available should they be necessary. We urge the Iranian leadership to cease their destructive and destabilizing activities and to move forward on a peaceful diplomatic path.
Yemen's Tehran-linked Houthi rebels, who on Friday announced a sudden halt to attacks on Saudi Arabia, claimed the strikes on state giant Aramco's facilities in Kurais, in the world's largest oil processing facility at Abqaiq. But Washington has pointed the finger at Tehran, condemning an act of war, which knocked out half of Saudi Arabia's oil production, and on Friday prompted U.S. President Donald Trump to sketch out the latest in a series of economic sanctions against Iran.
Well, these are the strongest sanctions ever put on a country. We are at a level of sanction that is far greater than ever before with respect to Iran. Today we did central bank, as you know, and we'll see. We'll see. They're having a lot of problems, and not only with us, they're having problems within their own country, and I think they have a lot of self-made problems. We are by far the strongest military in the world. But I will say I think the sanctions work, and the military would work, but that's a very severe form of winning but we win. Nobody can beat us militarily. Nobody can even come close.
Iran denies U.S. and Saudi accusations that it arms the Houthis. The United States already maintains sweeping sanctions on Iran, including on its central bank, with anyone who deals with it subject to prosecution due to Tehran's alleged nuclear program. But the new sanctions Friday were imposed for the additional reason of terrorism, according to Treasury, adding that Iran's central bank had provided billions of dollars to two groups blacklisted by the United States. Aramco officials said Abqaiq was struck 18 times, while nearby Qurais was hit 4 times in a raid that triggered multiple explosions and towering flames that took hours to extinguish. And as mentioned earlier, U.S. President Donald Trump announced new sanctions on Iran that he said were the toughest ever against another country, but indicated he did not plan a military strike, calling restraint a sign of strength.
We have just sanctioned the Iranian National Bank. That is their central banking system, and it's going to be at the highest level of sanctions. So that just took place, and a couple of other things. We have our Secretary of Treasury here, Steve Mnuchin. If you want to say just a word, Steve, before we begin.
Mr. President, as you instructed me, we are continuing the maximum pressure campaign. This is the last remaining source of funds, so both the Central Bank of Iran as well as the National Development Fund, which is their sovereign wealth fund, will be cut off from our banking system. So this will mean no more funds going to the ROGC or to fund terror. And this is on top of our oil sanctions and our financial institution sanctions. Thank you, Mr. President. This is very big. We've now cut off all source of funds to Iran.
We'll see what happens. Look, the United States is in a class by itself. We have the most powerful military in the world by far. There's nobody close. As you know, we've spent tremendous and hopefully. And we pray to God we never have to use it, but we've totally renovated and bought new nuclear, and the rest of our military is all brand new. But when I was running, everybody said, oh, he's going to get into war, he's going to get into war, he's going to blow everybody up, he's going to get into war. Well, the easiest thing I could do, in fact, I could do it while you're here, would say, go ahead, fellas, go do it. And that would be a very bad day for Iran. That's the easiest thing I could do. It's so easy. And for all of those that say, oh, they should do it, it shows weakness, it shows, actually, in my opinion, it shows strength. Because the easiest thing I could do, okay, go ahead, knock out 15 different major things in Iran. I could do that and all set to go. It's all set to go. But I'm not looking to do that if I can. I think I've changed a lot of minds. People are very surprised that, and many people are extremely happy. Many people are thrilled, and many people are saying, oh, I wish you'd hit the hell out of them. Well, let's see what happens. But it will take place in 1 minute. I could do it right here in front of you, and that would be it. And then you'd have a nice big story to report. And I think it shows far more strength to do it the way we're doing it. And again, whether it's next week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, doesn't make any difference. Whether it's now or in 3 weeks, doesn't make any difference. But I think the strong person's approach and the thing that does show strength would be showing a little bit of restraint.
President Trump in June authorized a military strike after Iran shut down a U.S. drone, only to call it off at the last moment. He recently said that he hopes for talks with President Hassan Rouhani, who responded that President Trump must first ease sanctions. President Trump last year pulled out of a nuclear accord with Iran, negotiated under former President Barack Obama, sending tensions soaring as he tried to stop all countries from buying Iran's oil. And talking to reporters as a new session of the United Nations General Assembly begins, Secretary General Antonio Guterres said, "This is the moment to cool tensions." Guterres was referring to the escalating crisis between the U.S. and Iran.
This is the moment to cool tensions, and nowhere is there more important than in the Gulf. This is also the time to promote dialogue and pave the way to political solutions, from Libya to Yemen, from Syria to Israel-Palestine, from Afghanistan to South Sudan. With a very high number of world leaders coming to the United Nations, we have a chance to advance diplomacy for peace. I think this attack is a dramatic escalation in the Gulf, and I believe that we absolutely need to stop this kind of escalation, and that we absolutely need to create the conditions to avoid a major confrontation of the Gulf that would have, as we have seen by the immediate impact on oil markets, if there would be a major confrontation in the Gulf, it would have devastating consequences for the region and globally. Through it all, my message to world leaders will be simple: put people first, their needs, their aspirations, their rights. People want solutions, commitments, and action. And I suspect that we'll hear loud and clear from young people over the weekend this message. We simply must translate all of the events of the coming days into an impulse and momentum to do more, starting immediately and with people at the center.
To Egypt now, rare small protests broke out in Cairo and other Egyptian cities, calling for the removal of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, but police quickly dispersed them, according to AFP journalists. Take a look. Dozens of people joined nighttime demonstrations around Tahrir Square. Tahrir Square is the epicenter of the 2011 revolution that toppled the country's longtime autocratic leader. Now, such demonstrations are rare after Egypt effectively banned protests under a law passed following the 2013 military ouster of Islamist ex-president Mohamed Morsi. Amid a heavy security presence, including riot police and plainclothes police officers, protesters were rounded up. At least 5 protesters being arrested and police firing tear gas at demonstrators around the square. Under the rule of General-turned-President Sisi, who led Morsi's ouster, authorities have launched a broad crackdown on dissidents, jailing thousands of Islamists as well as secular activists and popular bloggers. Footage of the demonstrations, in which dozens chant "Leave Sisi," was shared online using the hashtag Tahrir Square, which was trending worldwide. In 2013, Mr. Sisi led the military's overthrow of Egypt's first democratically elected president, Mohamed Morsi, following protests against his rule. And since then, he has overseen what human rights groups say is an unprecedented crackdown on dissent that has led to the detention of tens of thousands of people. In other news, the slow-churning remnants of Tropical Storm Imelda that flooded parts of southeast Texas has left some parts of it flooded. EBC Texas Bureau's Jessica Isidro gives us an update.
Here in Houston, Texas, Tropical Storm Imelda continues to cause flooding in urban areas. Residents are advised by authorities to stay in shelter and avoid unnecessary travel.
Governor Greg Abbott declared a state of disaster in southeast Texas counties impacted by widespread flooding due to Tropical Storm Imelda. The declaration gives local officials authority to access any state resources they may need in order to respond to the storm. Meteorologist Jeff Lindner with Harris County reports life-threatening flash flood events in progress over the Houston metro. He warns citizens to avoid travel and that people are safest where they are currently located. If a vehicle is stalled in water, get out of the vehicle immediately. Only use 911 for emergencies. If you do travel, be aware of high water and always remember, turn around, don't drown. An update from the San Jacinto River Authority states that heavy rainfall measuring 3 to 5 inches per hour are moving into the Kingwood, Humble, Huffman, Crosby, Atascocita, Highlands, and Mont Belvieu areas. This will cause a rapid onset flash flood in urban areas, overbank flooding, and near bankful conditions across northeast Harris County, Liberty County, and southeast Montgomery County early today. Stay tuned to Eagle News for updates on Tropical Storm Imelda.
Reporting from Houston, Texas, I'm Jessica Isidro with Eagle News. 1 with 25.
To Japan now, where Rugby World Cup organizers issued an extreme weather warning and closed 2 fan zones on Saturday as a large and powerful typhoon approaches Japan, but said matches are expected to escape unscathed. Take a look. Typhoon Tappa has formed off the southwest coast of Japan and is expected to clip the western portion of the country before taking direct aim at the northern island of Hokkaido. The storm should arrive too late to affect the 2 matches being played in Hokkaido this weekend. Australia against Fiji on Saturday and England versus Tonga on Sunday. Japan is one of the most natural disaster-prone countries in the world, subject to around 20 typhoons a year and hundreds of earthquakes of various sizes. Typhoon Faxai smashed through Tokyo and nearby Chiba on the weekend before the tournament started, killing 3 people and sparking travel chaos at Narita Airport. Tens of thousands of households in Chiba were left without power for several days. From rains to drought, a prolonged drought in New South Wales in Australia, and it's affecting farmers and their industry. Here's Emmy Capilita Roja for an update.
We are bringing you the latest updates on the drought conditions in Australia. Several areas in Australia are experiencing prolonged droughts since early this year, particularly in the state of New South Wales. According to the latest media release by the New South Wales Department of Primary Industries, or DPI, not much rainfall has been experienced last August. Thereby, dry conditions are also being felt up to this month, September. This has resulted to farm and produce conditions struggling up to this point. Currently, 95% of New South Wales remains in one of the 3 categories of drought. According to Dr. Anthony Clark, leader of climate applications from the state's Department of Primary Industries, drought has been ongoing for 24 months or 2 years now, or even more in many parts of New South Wales. The impacts include failed cropping seasons, low water availability, and stock feed deficits. In the weather report by the Bureau of Meteorology, or BOM, their forecast states that there is a 30% or lower chance for an abundant rainfall in New South Wales. Such conditions are not helpful, and that these will also aggravate the bushfire conditions in other areas. To address these worsening drought conditions, the Department of Primary Industries launched a state-of-the-art emergency command vehicle bringing frontline assistance to regional communities. The staff from New South Wales Rural Assistance Authority, or RAA, and Rural Resilience teams are involved in this very important initiative. The launch of the vehicle reinforces the Government of New South Wales' responsiveness to protect the very valuable $17.5 billion primary industry sector, communities, and environment. The authorities are advising the affected communities to continue to visit the website droughthub.nsw.gov.au for advisories or assistance. They may also contact the Rural Resilience Team, financial counselors, or local land services representatives for other concerns. Reporting for Eagle News International, this is Emmy Capilita Roja, and I am one with 25.
Thank you, Emmy. Meanwhile, a 7th victim of the extreme weather conditions that battered parts of Spain last week was located in Alicante province. Here's Mark Julius Aala for an update.
We have an update on the torrential rains and floods that hit the southeastern part of Spain. The death toll has now risen to 7. This after the discovery of the body of a missing 66-year-old Dutch national, according to local officials. The alarm was raised on Sunday after a man was sucked into flood water in a canal at Dolores. It's a town 40 kilometers southeast of Alicante. The body, matching a description by the Dutchman's family, was recovered in San Fulgencio village, several kilometers away. Torrential rains battered the area between Wednesday and Sunday. It caused widespread flooding and leaving many areas cut off. Thousands of people were evacuated from their homes with help from the army. Reporting from Madrid, Spain, I am Mark Juriseala, and I am 1 with 25.
Thank you, Mark. Masses of children skipped school to join a global strike against climate change that teen activist Greta Thunberg said was, quote, only the beginning. This was ahead of a UN Youth Summit she will participate on Saturday, U.S. time. Some 4 million people filled the city streets around the world, according to organizers, in what was billed as the biggest ever protest against the threat posed to the planet by rising temperatures. Take a look.
We are not in school today. And this time, we are not alone. We have some adults who are not at work today either. And why? Because this is an emergency. Our house is on fire. The empty promises are the same, the lies are the same, and the inaction is the same. Nowhere have I found anyone in power who dares to tell it like it is. The eyes of the world will be on them. They have a chance to prove that they, too, are united behind the science. They have a chance to take leadership, to prove they actually hear us. Do you think they hear us? No. We will make them hear us.
Humanity has ever faced, and our government is doing nothing.
So I don't think anyone needs a reason to be in this strike right now. This is for your future, this is for your existence, and this is for your life.
The earth is dying. Stop denying. The earth is dying. Stop denying.
They need to take their responsibility and do this, and that's what we are going to try to push for, because now we have proven what we can do, and now they have to prove that they are listening to us.
Hey,
Meanwhile, young people in the Philippines also took part in what was the biggest or the largest global climate protest in history, demanding immediate action to stop climate change. Take a look.
There are a lot of people here that know the effects because we can feel it. Like for example, in our climate, there are a lot of typhoons and a lot of the trash is also coming to us.
Me as part of the youth, we will inherit the earth, and of course we would not want to inherit something that's dead, something that would benefit us at all. And since this is the only planet that we have, it is the youth must arm themselves and to mobilize themselves to be able to act now to prevent the disasters of the climate crisis.
Five of the 10 deadliest typhoons to hit the Philippines have come since 2006, which is Haiyan, Thelma, Ike, Fengshen, Washi, Durian, Bopa, Trix, Amy, and Nina. These are the 10 deadliest typhoons of the Philippines between 1947 and 2014. What's alarming is that 5 of the 10 have occurred since 2006, having affected and displacing thousands of citizens every time. 7 of these 10 deadly storms each resulted in more than 1,000 casualties. But the deadliest storm on record in the Philippines is Typhoon Haiyan, known locally as Typhoon Yolanda, which was responsible for more than 6,300 lost lives, over 4 million displaced citizens. Among the efforts to build a sustainably peaceful world, urgent climate action is needed to curb environmental threats to all our well-being and security, according to the Secretary General during the annual peace gathering in New York, addressing a largely youthful crowd. Each September 21st, the General Assembly mandated International Day of Peace is observed, strengthening the ideals of peace both within and among all nations and peoples, with this year's theme spotlighting climate action as key to that aim. Take a look.
Each year on this day, we come together to renew our commitment to peace and a world free of violence and strife. But we know that peace is beyond the reach of so many people and communities. Around the world, we see conflicts everywhere, tensions growing, power relations unclear, and insecurities on the rise. And that is why today we call on combatants around the world to lay down their arms and observe a day of global ceasefire and non-violence. We know that peace is more than just the absence of war. It's about respect, tolerance, and thriving societies in which people live in harmony with each other and with the environment. And our theme this year is exactly climate action for peace, because we know how much climate change threatens world peace. We see it in worsening air pollution and more frequent heat waves, rising sea levels and disappearing lakes, unpredictable weather patterns and forced migration. Natural disasters and extreme weather events, many a direct consequence of climate change, are displacing 3 times as many people as conflicts. And the competition for resources is creating tensions between peoples and countries. It's no coincidence that the countries most vulnerable to climate change are often the most vulnerable to conflict and fragility.
Our next story takes us to Canada. Having been affected by record-level floods, the city of Gatineau and Ottawa was in need of volunteers who would help clean up the community, and members of the Church of Christ immediately responded. The Iglesia Ni Cristo received a recognition. Our EBC correspondent, Andre Lahua, reports.
Residents of Gatineau gathered in Place de la Cité to pay tribute to the volunteers of Spring Flood of 2019, Rendezvous des Héros, and to explore the emergency services provided by the city.
The spring flood of 2019 reached its peak water levels more than that of 2017, affecting both cities of Ottawa and Gatineau and nearby communities. This is due to rapid snowmelt, surge of water levels in the Ottawa River, and massive rainfall. Hundreds of Canadian troops and volunteers are gathered at the time to fill sandbags, and when the flood receded, volunteers gathered again to clear out sandbags in the areas affected by the flood. In the spring flood, members of the Church of Christ are quick in giving helping hand to both cities of Ottawa and Gatineau by volunteering cleaning up sandbags and also in clearing out thousands of sandbags. Check donations were also given by the Church of Christ to Moisson-Outaouais and Jutami. Those are shelters and food banks who provided services to residents affected by the flood. The mayor recognized the effort and generosity of the members of the Church of Christ in helping to the community which they serve.
Mayor of Gatineau, Mayor Maxime Pedno-Jobin, acknowledges the efforts of the firefighters, police officers, paramedics, and citizen volunteers, which includes the members of the Church of Christ in Nepean at time calamities.
We decided to organize this to say thank you to all the volunteers that did an amazing job during the floodings. We had many people that suffered a lot, and because of those volunteers, there was a lot less suffering.
Puis, what's the next big step right now for the people that in Gatineau that they got flooded or?
Yeah, the victims are in a difficult situation right now because things are better in their houses, and most of them got reimbursements. It's way better than in 1917. Yes, the issue now is what do we do with those areas, and that's a lot of thinking from the Quebec government. There are 8 ministries that are together trying to figure out a plan for the areas that were affected all over Quebec, and that's going to take months. And for the people living in those areas, it's a lot of uncertainty for many months, if not years. So that's also a tough period that they'll have to go through.
And what is the needs right now for the city to help the people during for the flood victims?
The direct help is almost finished. We have about 25 families that are still in hotels or in accommodations provided by the Red Cross, and 4 or 5 from the tornado. So that's approximately 30 families that are still being helped, but we have all the resources for that.
The Church of Christ was once again recognized for the humanitarian efforts that we helped in all of the previous activities here in the city of Gatineau. Led by our Executive Minister, Brother Eduardo V. Manalo, in following what is recorded in the Holy Scriptures in Proverbs 3:27, whenever we possibly can, do good to those who need it. And with the help and mercy of our Almighty God, we helped those who are in need in the recent floodings here in the city. We also helped in giving food donations to those who are also in need of those things. And we likewise help them to understand the truth upheld inside the Church of Christ.
And please allow me to say a special thanks to all the volunteers of the Church of Christ. There were a few hundreds that participated in the tornado and the flooding, and so they were on the ground with us and they gave us a big help. So thank you to all those volunteers.
Emergency services provided by the City of Gatineau were presented today to the residents that they would know what to do in case something happened. Simulations of emergency were cooking fire, extinguished after an accident, fire outbreaks, and evacuations by the firehouse of the Ottawa Fire Department. and while driving while intoxicated and affected intersection of fire for children of all ages.
I'm André Lajoie in Gatineau, Quebec. For Eagle News, I am one with 25.
Thank you, Andre. Eagle News, we'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Hong Kong police clashed with protesters in Junmin district. Take a look. Hong Kong entered its 16th straight weekend of protests on Saturday with a march in Junmin. At least 3 people have been taken away by police during skirmishes after tear gas was fired. Elsewhere, protesters plan to sit in at Yuen Long MTR station on Saturday night to mark 2 months since gangs of men wearing white attacked commuters, including black-clad demonstrators returning from a mass rally. A police source says 3 water cannon trucks are on standby at secret locations to handle any possible confrontation. The force has deployed the trucks 3 times over the past few weeks. Hong Kong's protests were sparked by a now abandoned plan to allow extraditions to the authoritarian Chinese mainland. But after Beijing and local leaders took a hard line, the protests snowballed into a wider movement calling for police accountability and universal suffrage. More than 7,000 police officers are to be deployed for rallies in Paris over fears that yellow vest protesters and their radical anarchist black blocs could try to infiltrate a march against climate change in the French capital. Take a look. The Yellow Vest movement erupted 10 months ago and blindsided President Emmanuel Macron, who protesters accused of being out of touch with the needs of ordinary French people. Their weekly demonstrations prompted Macron to loosen the state's purse strings to the tune of nearly 17 billion euros in wage boosts and tax cuts for low earners, but tapered off over the summer. Fresh Yellow Vest rallies are planned for Saturday, but it remains to be seen whether the movement will regain the momentum of the winter and early spring, when the protests often descended into violent clashes with security forces, especially in Paris. President Macron on Friday called for calm, saying that while it's good that people express themselves, they should not disrupt the climate protests and cultural events that are going ahead on Saturday. Violence against foreign nationals in South Africa has forced more than 1,500 people to flee their homes, according to UNHCR. Attacks have left at least 12 people dead, including refugees and South Africans. Charlie Yasley told journalists in Geneva. He said UN staff had also seen a spike in the number of calls to emergency hotlines in recent weeks after incidents in places including Katleong near Johannesburg in Gauteng province. Today, around 800 people have sought safety in community halls in Katleong, but many have said they want to return home to Mozambique, Malawi, and Zimbabwe, according to UNHCR's Charlie Yasley. Reports indicate that dozens of Malawians and Zimbabweans have decided to return already, along with more than 130 Mozambicans and over 300 Nigerians. Working with the government of South Africa, refugee agency UNHCR has deployed relief items, emergency shelters, psychosocial care, legal assistance, and support for those who have lost their jobs because of the violence. Community dialogues have also been established with host communities to strengthen social cohesion, according to the agency. Around 20,000 firearms have been bought by New Zealand's government in less than a month as part of its gun buyback scheme. The scheme and 6-month amnesty was put in place after gun law reform supported by all parties but act banned most military-style semi-automatic firearms in the aftermath of the March 15 terrorist attack. Our EBC correspondent from New Zealand, Greg Bessa, reports.
I am now at the Belderbeck Hall in Wainumata Lower Hutt in one of the firearms collection events by the New Zealand police, which are taking place in various areas across the country. It can be remembered that after the Christchurch mosque shooting, which resulted to an untimely death of 51 innocent lives, the government has amended its arms legislation to include prohibition of special types of firearms and its accessories, which are deemed dangerous and threat to public safety and order due to its possible malicious intent, including any act of terrorism.
Upon promulgation of the Arms Amendment Regulations 2019, the New Zealand government has banned the military-style semi-automatics, magazines and parts that can be used to assemble prohibited guns. Through the gun buyback scheme, which is being administered by the New Zealand police, firearms owners can be compensated when they hand in their prohibited firearms at local collection events, price assessment of which will be based on make, model, and the condition of their firearms. Nonetheless, owners can only be compensated if they have lawfully obtained their firearms and its accessories as prohibited, and if they have corresponding gun licenses. Since its first firearms collection event in Christchurch on 13th of July 2019, the New Zealand police has so far conducted more than 175 collection events across New Zealand. As of 16 September of this year, the government has already spent more than 35 million New Zealand dollars that netted the collection of 21,854 firearms and 80,833 parts or accessories from 13,871 owners. It is expected that these figures will further increase as more firearms collection events will be held throughout the country until 20th December 2019, when the gun buyback scheme and amnesty ends. Inspector Terry Vandelin, the police officer assigned to supervise the collection event here in Wainumatta, explained on how the gun buyback scheme works. He also elaborated that firearms owners would be welcome with no question asked and be accorded with utmost privacy when they are handing in their prohibited guns.
Okay, so the buyback process, amnesty buyback, is if you have amnesty firearms, you can bring them to us here at these local collection points. We will take those firearms off you and deal with them as such under amnesty. So you can drop them here and just walk away. No questions asked and no issues. If you come in here with firearms that are prohibited, they'll be under the buyback system, and the schedule and everything is online on newzealandpolice.gov.nz. And those firearms we will take here. We will, as you walk into our location here, we will clear those firearms, make sure they are safe. And then you'll be put in line waiting for one of the tables to process your items or your firearms. So you sit down with the assessor and make sure that everyone agrees that the condition of the firearm is what is agreed, because that relates to the price that the money will be paid. Once we go through all the firearms and we agree to a price, it's all loaded into our software system. They tap on the screen and they agree with that, and that is automatically emailed straight to their email, and a receipt is part of that, and within 10 working days they should expect the money in their bank account. We started off this morning, we opened just before 10 o'clock. We had quite a few people waiting. We are full up with people in there at the moment. I don't think there's a chair free at the moment. However, we are working through the customers and we're getting the job done. There's just a small wait at this stage, so we appreciate everyone's patience, and there is hot food and hot coffee and tea for people as they wait, and we'll progress the people as fast as we can. Okay, so we started off this morning, we opened just before 10 o'clock. We had quite a few people waiting. We are full up with people in there at the moment. I don't think there's a chair free at the moment. However, we are working through the customers and we're getting the job done. There's just a small wait at this stage, so we appreciate everyone's patience, and there is hot food and hot coffee and tea for people as they wait, and we'll progress the people as fast as we can.
The gun buyback scheme has its own merit but it has also generated controversies not only within the ranks of firearm owners, but as well as to other stakeholders concerned. But the New Zealand government, through its implementing arm, the New Zealand Police, has remained optimistic of the scheme's success, especially in achieving its intended purpose, which is to prevent any repeat of brutal shooting on a massive scale. From Wainuiomata, Lower Hutt, Wellington, New Zealand, this is Greg Besa. I am and will always be one with 25.
Thank you, Greg. Meanwhile, before we go on a break, on a lighter note, here's Tyra Lu to take us to a snail-inspired water well in Japan. Tyra?
Water wells. They sound so mundane and insignificant, but behold the incredible stories behind its simplicity. Like this ancient snail-shaped water well located in Tokyo's medieval Tama region towards the western part of the prefecture. I'm at the entrance of the Maimaizu well here in Hamura City in the western part of Tokyo. Join me as I go down to the bottom of this long winding pathway towards the well. Because of its spiral pathway, it was named after the snail, or as the Japanese call it, maimai, and so the birth of the Maimaizu water well. The well is already over 800 years old and has been here since the 13th century. It attests to the hardships of the people when trying to get water. History check. Digging a well vertically before the Edo period was very difficult. Hence, the method of Maimaizu well was developed, where it is dug in the center of a pit with the shape of an inverted cone. From the point of view of the well at the bottom of the pathway, this is what you will see. From Hamura City here in Tokyo, Japan, this is Sirenel Piliulu for Eagle News International, and I am one with 25.
Thank you, Tyra. Eagle News will be back. Stay tuned.
Tungkulin ng MTRCB ang mag-provide na appropriate
Rosalie Castro for the report.
The O-Train, Ottawa Train, Confederation Line, Light Rail, Transit finally opens its doors for full service in the city of Ottawa this weekend. Construction began in 2013, and according to the city, it is a state-of-the-art LRT system and the Ottawa's largest transportation infrastructure project since the building of the Rideau Canal. The $2.1 billion project replaces existing diesel-powered buses routing around the city, running from 12.5 kilometers with 13 stations from Blair Road to Tony's Pasture, and a 2.5 kilometers underground tunnel in downtown core. The transit system has been a challenge to the city as Ottawa's population continues to grow, and rural areas and suburban areas continues to develop. According to the City of Ottawa, transit through downtown accommodates 9,500 to 10,000 customers per direction during peak hours, and the city estimates that ridership is going to grow rapidly over the next 2 decades.
Just to show support, it's a grand opening, a long time coming for OC Transpo, the transit system here in Ottawa. Just wanted to come out here. You know, we're handing out free tickets to Ottawa Red Blacks game, Red Blacks Fury, as well as the 67s. Just kind of showing our support and getting involved in the community.
The new LRT will help reduce congestion and will provide quick and efficient access to commuters. The increase in capacity will accommodate 300 passengers per car. With the development of the Confederation line, this created jobs and sustainability for the citizens of Ottawa. It is a zero-emission light rail train, reducing road vehicle emissions each year and tons of greenhouse gases and criteria air contaminants. According to the city, the zero-emission electric trains reduces carbon dioxide by approximately 38,000 tons per year by 2031, the equivalent of taking 7,300 cars off the street. The city purchased 34 fully electric Alstom Cytadis Spirit cars designed with maximum vehicle speed of 100 kilometers an hour and an average operating speed is 35 kilometers an hour, decreases the amount of travel time.
They advertise that you can take your bicycle on it, but you can take it on the elevator coming into the station, but they have a little kind of thing that you can put on the stairs, but it doesn't work very well. And then on the train itself, there's actually nowhere to put the bicycle. You're just going to stand in the middle with the bicycle, and it's the same for people who have strollers as well. So unfortunately, it doesn't look like it was designed for people. I don't know how wheelchairs will go on it either, but I think it'll be a little bit difficult for people that have anything other than themselves to go on.
According to Alstom, manufacturer of Cytadis, the LRT system is designed to meet the specific needs of North American cities. Cytadis Spirit is specifically tailored to deal with extreme climate conditions faced by some North American cities, such as Ottawa, with standing temperatures as low as minus 38 degrees. I am Rosalie Castro in Ottawa for Eagle News Service. I am 1 with 25.
Here now is a feature from our Micronesia correspondent Irish Dale Radam on a lesson-filled in center stage play that was recently presented by members of the Iglesia ni Cristo in the island territory of Guam. Take a look.
Produced by members of the Iglesia ni Cristo, Church of Christ, in Micronesia through In Center Stage, the theatrical play, Back Into Your Arms, was presented before a live audience at the iconic Guam Museum.
You have a bunch of people watching you, and usually we'd have like EVMs or like AT Humanity stuff, something we would do to, you know, give to the community, but I guess we're just kind of like entertaining, which is good. It's still good because then we still have a little bit of a life lesson in it.
I try to practice stage presence, and I try to think about what I can do as a person with no lines to try to express myself without saying anything, but through physical motions.
Basically, I had to memorize all the scenes to make sure all the props go in the right places so the actors can use it to the full advantage.
When I was told that my daughter and my son is included in the cast, I was so nervous, me as the father, because I don't know if they could be able to cope up with the practice.
I know that the kids have worked really, really hard to really give us something to be inspired by, to be uplifted by, to be edified. So today I just expect to really be moved by the great and amazing talents of these young kids who have really labored so hard to give us something to really be inspired by.
The story follows a young boy named Charlie in his efforts to help his mom, Nita, who is also a single mother. Beset with financial strains, Nita is determined to be strong for her son and to raise him to be God-fearing. Yet, like most parents, she does her best not to let Charlie see her in distress. Her precocious son's tenacity soon gets the best of him and is tested in his steadfastness to always do what is right. In a twist of events, the naive Charlie finds himself exposed to a band of children different from him. Portrayed through memorable characters, a clear distinction is made between Charlie and the other children. Separated from his mother, he experiences loneliness and sadness, but still, he holds on to his beliefs and values.
He tries selling his toys to little kids who are homeless, which he does not know, so he ends up having to follow them and then gets himself in a really tight situation to the point where he just doesn't want to be there. He is not having it right now. He just wants to go home.
Despite being young of age, having little or no experience in public speaking or stage acting, most of the cast members felt surprised about how they performed that night.
This play was a very fun thing to do. I had great. Everyone had great. I hope we do this again sometime.
I don't have much of a role, honestly, but I have one line. But I know the power of that one line, so...
What is this one line?
My one line is, be strong, Nita. We're here for you. Don't lose hope because God will never leave you.
My role in the play was as Charlie, who was kidnapped and tricked and is also the main character. I feel excited and I want to do it again. I feel really shocked because it's my first time experiencing this. I've only performed in musical performances.
I think it benefits me because I get to really see how everybody works together, and I get to learn how everybody has this story to share. And when we work together and we start talking to each other, it helps us to learn more about each other, and we have this stronger bond and a stronger faith with God.
Meanwhile, parents express their joy to watch their children perform on a live stage.
So that makes me very proud and happy, Dad, knowing that my children will be part of the activities for the celebration of the victorious and dynamic leadership of Brother Eduardo V. Manalo.
On behalf of all the brethren in the Ecclesiastical District of Micronesia, we would like to greet our beloved Executive Minister, Brother Eduardo V. Manalo, on occasion of his 10th anniversary of his dynamic leadership as the Executive Minister in the Church of Christ.
Happy anniversary, Paul! We love you,
Paul! Reporting from the island of Guam, I'm Irish Del Redam for Eagle News. 1 with 25.
And that's it for tonight's broadcast. For everyone here on Eagle News, I'm Alma Angeles, always 1 with 25. Good night.